We're definitely starting to see a much clearer link between mom's mental health and breastfeeding. And it really is interesting because we've moved from wondering if the difficulty with breastfeeding is causing moms to have maternal mental health issues, to starting to think about whether or not the challenges that women sometimes present with breastfeeding can be a symptom or a marker for us that we need to explore more deeply whether or not there are some maternal mental health issues. That's not to say that women who choose not to breastfeed have a mental health disorder, and I think that's one distinction, but that in fact that women who present with breastfeeding problems are much more likely to actually be suffering from a maternal mood disorder. Nice large studies coming out of the UK in particular have really helped us to understand that that's the link. And that in fact it's not the opposite. The breastfeeding challenges are not causing the maternal mood disorder, but in fact they're a result of the maternal mood disorder. This is their body and their baby's way of saying that there is an ongoing mental health issue and that addressing it might be beneficial for both members of that pair.
Mothers who are experiencing postpartum depression, they're at very high risk to prematurely stopping breastfeeding, not by 4 weeks, but by 8 weeks. A lot of mothers have very high expectations around breastfeeding their baby. So consequently, if they stop breastfeeding because of the postpartum depression, that can put a significant amount of stress on these moms, can make them very anxious. It's another strike to their maternal self-esteem.
Women who have depressive symptoms in the early postpartum period, they tend to breastfeed for a shorter duration. They tended to have more negative concepts about the breastfeeding experience, and they tended to have lower confidence in their ability to breastfeed.
With postpartum depression, what it does is it changes the mother's thought processes. She has more negative cognitions. If she really wants to breastfeed her baby and she's not successful, that will have a more negative impact on her than if she doesn't really care if breastfeeding is successful or not. She thought that she would try, and if she's successful, that's fine. If she's not, then she's not upset about it.
I think we've known for some time now that there is a link between breastfeeding and postpartum mood disorders, and that women often stop breastfeeding earlier than planned when they suffer from postpartum mood disorders. The other link is that breastfeeding can be a protective factor, so that if women breastfeed successfully, that is protective for postpartum mood disorders, and I think that's a really exciting part of the research.
A lot of what breastfeeding should involve in that postpartum period has to be about discussing what the options are and what choices are and what ultimately works best for everyone. And we need to take a step back sometimes and think, are we doing this purely because of the baby's health? Are we doing this purely because of the mother's health? But what about that pair? It's a dyad, it's a team that works together. If women are choosing not to breastfeed, they really should feel very comfortable in being able to explain why they feel comfortable with that choice, and it's our job to make certain that they feel comfortable with that choice.
If a mom is suffering from postpartum depression, and if she's trying to tell you that really breastfeeding is not working for her and the breastfeeding is making her symptoms worse, we have to recognize this is mom's decision and supporting her no matter what she decides to do.
We need to be less judgmental. There is a bit of a view that is in some of our systems that says, you should be able to do this. It's the most natural thing around. Why can't you do this? And the message to moms is really somehow you're inadequate.
I had this idea of how things were going to be, like a natural, fun, growing, bonding time, and it was just a lot. And breastfeeding was really hard. Within hours of him being born, I felt as though I couldn't give him what he needed. I just felt like I just never felt like he was satisfied. It was really tough. Like that point, the stress was very high, emotions were very high. I just felt like I was losing. I just felt like I wanted to breastfeed so badly, and I just felt like I couldn't do it. I was anxious, very anxious. And then there was, all this pressure to bring baby to breast, skin to skin, and get him to drink and get him to latch. I was so focused on giving him breast milk that I was missing out on giving him so much more of me. As soon as I found myself thinking about not breastfeeding, I felt relieved. I remember sobbing. I remember looking down and Brayden was drinking and I was sobbing. I felt like the worst mother ever. I felt guilty for feeling relieved. I felt guilty for the decision that I had made. I felt horrible. People call it the baby blues, and I know that's a real thing, but I feel like sometimes the magnitude of what women deal with is minimized.
Problems with breastfeeding, challenges with breastfeeding should always be an opportunity for care providers to screen for postpartum mood issues. And when that gives us an opportunity to change that conversation and to bring in concerns around mental health issues, again, we have a real opportunity to take women who may well suffer in silence out into a more open discussion and to really use that breastfeeding challenge as an opportunity to ask much more specific questions.
I think all moms need to be screened, whether it's a formal scale like an Edinburgh or informally using open-ended questions with the moms, asking how they're feeling, asking what brings them joy in their day, ask them how they feel about the breastfeeding. We have a special opportunity to see our moms and baby pairs fairly frequently in the first year. It would be really helpful if we had a standardized protocol so that at a certain visit or at several visits postpartum, we would know that that would be part of our visit. Most moms either don't know how to access good support or the support isn't available or offered to them. If they're not available to a mom, those moms are at increased risk of both problems, both breastfeeding challenges as well as postpartum depression. So if those supports are in place early and easily accessible to moms, perhaps we'll see less of those challenges with some of the moms that we're seeing postpartum. So it's a real opportunity for us to start focusing on those moms early, right after the delivery, to really make sure that the breastfeeding is going as well as possible. And especially moms who have postpartum depression, those are the moms that we need to make sure we do absolutely everything in our power to make sure that breastfeeding goes well. In a perfect world, every mom should be supported with breastfeeding, and every mom should be screened and supported if they have concerns about postpartum depression or mood changes. And a lot of the time, I think that can be done jointly.
If women receive the support they need to breastfeed successfully, this can be a really big help. Although it has a protective factor, breastfeeding isn't the treatment for it, but not breastfeeding is not the treatment for it either. They need proper treatment for their mental illness, they need the right support for that, and then that gives them the freedom to do what's right for them in regard to breastfeeding.
When I got pregnant with my second child, my daughter, I kind of went into it with a really different mindset. I started journaling, just in anticipation of her coming and getting used to the idea of going back to that time, that stage, that anxious time. I started writing down my thoughts and writing down small goals that I had so that I was a little bit more prepared than I was with Brayden. When she was born, without prompting, I put her to breast and she latched. And She drank and she slept, and I slept. I just kind of went about it with the mentality that it was going to be one feeding at a time. I ended up breastfeeding her for 6 months. And I remember on the day that she turned 6 months, I remember looking down and thinking, this is it, hon, we're done. And I was okay with that, and I was incredibly proud, and I think I just placed more emphasis on the importance of me being happy and me being healthy and giving my kids all of what they need.
Being fetal-centric is really being all about the baby, and it, for me, was an important realization personally that I had to take a step back, and although I want every baby that I look after to be healthy, I also want every mom to be healthy. And what that really has emphasized for me is the critical importance of mother's health and baby's health together.
The Bestside Resource Centre at Health Nexus is really pleased to educate families and service providers about the connection between postpartum mood disorders and mental illness and breastfeeding.